If you're someone who admires godly figures like Captain America or the blue-eyed Krypton Boy and hold them on a pedestal, please don't even try to know what The Boys is. It's for your own good. Frankly, I first got introduced to this crazy-ass universe when the television show dropped and saw A-Train flashing through a girl with blood and meat splattered in the first few minutes, and man, was I hooked. Kinda questioned my sanity while reeling over the gore and violence of the show, but guess what? I started digging deeper, and I found out about the Boys comics, and oh my god, the show is a babyface compared to what the comics have in store. Yeah, I know I was super late, you judgy. The Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson created comics of 2006 were so graphic and gruesome that DC cut all ties with it. Thankfully, Dynamite Entertainment came to help, and ever since, the creators have not held back and published any and every insanely dark plot they wanted to. Turns out, people love the madness way more than a fairy tale like superhero story. So buckle up, because I'm about to drop 10 of the darkest moments from the Boys comics. The airplane catastrophe, Homelander Unleashed. In episode 4 of The Boys Season 1, Homelander and Maeve are acting all panicked and concerned about saving a passenger plane, the transoceanic Flight 37 from Paris to Chicago, which has been hijacked. However, after the big blue bad boy accidentally destroyed the plane's cockpit, Maeve suggested he hold up the plane, but Homelander simply stated he cannot do so. Even when Maeve begged him to save at least 2 kids, he chose not to, fearing the whole flawed saving attempt would become public. Left with no other option, Maeve gave in, and Homelander mercilessly allowed the plane to crash into the ocean. This was one of the biggest WTF moments in the show, but actually, this sequence was highly toned down from what was shown in issue 21 of the 2006 comics. Here, the Seven are up in the sky to control the hostage situation, but no one seems to have a solid plan. In fact, they start killing off the passengers unwittingly, while Homelander goes on a disgusting rant full of racist slurs and crass language before the group finally departs from the plane and allows it to crash into the Brooklyn Bridge. Even Maeve didn't care about the people there and shouted, "Get the F off me," before whooshing out of the plane. In fact, Homelander even kills one of his own, Mr. Marathon, A-Train's predecessor, during his reckless efforts to kill the hijackers which opened aside of the flight. The terrorist hijacking plot was connected to the horrific 9/11 event, which makes it all the more dark. Pizzaface, Macabre Russian Mission. The comics got so brutal at times that the television adaptation did not even dare to portray some scenes, given the broadcasting rules. In The Boys Volume 2, Issue 11, a shocking artwork appears, which was not a big plot point or something, but remains etched in our minds for its horrifying style. A minor character named Flunky is introduced here. He is shown as a Russian errand boy, appearing alongside the more prominent figure Love Sausage, aka Vasily Vazvorshkin. Vaz is a former Russian cop, superhero, and communist who now owns a bar. The Boys team share a good rapport with Vaz and often get a drink or two in his bar. While discussing their mutual despair about the rise of Russian crime mobs, the details of Compound V, and the worthlessness of the Seven, they decided to order a pizza. Seems pretty normal, right? Just a couple of acquaintances chatting and waiting for a large, cheesy pizza to arrive. Well, I'm gonna spoil the dish for you forever now. When the pizza appeared, Vaz was a little surprised that it wasn't Flunky who delivered it. Nevertheless, they opened the box to discover that Flunky was the topping of their pizza. His face was skinned and put on as a topping. Are you sure you want to add some extra cheese to your margarita anymore? Oops. Butcher's gruesome revenge, Little Nina's death. Little Nina, aka Nina Nemenko, was the most menacing villain for the Boys during their escapade in Russia. Yeah, the cute nickname had me for a second too. Nina was a crime leader who was working closely with Vought. Her mission was to overthrow the Russian government and become the head of the state. She gathered a group of goons who were now turned into soups thanks to Vought's endless supply of Compound V. She conspired to attack Moscow using her soups, whom she planned planned to blast off and then rise as a hero. But obviously, the boys foiled her plan. Now, there's something about Nina that we probably should have never known, but had to. Nina was addicted to masturbation and always carried a large vibrator wherever she went, giving herself pleasure the moment she would be alone. However, Nina was unaware that Vought double-crossed her and decided to kill her. The company had a bomb planted in her private jet, which was sneakily removed by Butcher from the cockpit and placed inside a, Little Nina's big-ass vibrator. At least, that's what fans figured out. While Little Nina was excited to turn on her not-so-little sex toy, it detonated the moment she pressed the button, and Butcher got his way. That had to be the most horrible way to die. Assault and trauma. Starlight's induction. Annie January was a bright, ambitious superhero who always had one dream: to join the greatest superhero squad ever and do good for the world. When she finally stepped into the Vought Tower as Starlight, she didn't just lose her name, she lost all hope. Starlight was horribly ripped off of every ounce of dignity, be it Deep molesting her or the company wanting her to wear a skimpy one-piece, objectifying the shit out of her. But the comics did her worse. In issue 3 of The Boys, Starlight's expectations are shattered when she sees the trio, Homelander, A-Train, and Black Noir, standing in front of her with their pants down. She is horrified to know about the price she has to pay to become a member of the Seven. A shocked Starlight exclaims, "You're going to force yourselves on me?" To which Homelander very calmly responds that no one will force themselves on her, it's just a test of her dedication to join the team. Betrayed and helpless, she had to engage in sexual activities with the Supes. Later, we see a disgusted Starlight throwing up in the bathroom where she comes across Maeve and for a moment gets awestruck by her and starts praising her before the Queen tells her to fuck off. The young Christian farm girl was now stuck in a high-security building with sexual offenders all around, without any support whatsoever. I'm not sure if the creators took a misogynistic take with this storyline, or if they were just trying to throw light on the reality of women surviving in a male-dominated world. Casting couch, sleeping your way to the top, we are all aware of these phases, which simply label a woman as a whore for having to do what she had to do to make it in a patriarchal world. Super not. Women all around the globe know how unfortunately true this is. The worst part here? Starlight could not stand up for herself despite all those powers just because she was a woman, and she had to pay her price in body. The Black Noir twist. Beyond psychotic. While the TV series glorified Homelander in his own twisted manner, the comics had someone way darker and ruthless than the laser-eyed devil. It's none other than Black Noir, who is portrayed to be silly enough in the show to choke on a bar of almond joy. Ennis and Robertson actually made Black Noir to be a clone of Homelander, as we can see in issue 65. Noir was created by Vought as a failsafe if Homelander ever went out of his limits and lost his mind. Throughout the entire comic series, Noir is shown as a stoic and mute personality who somehow continues to keep a check on Homelander. However, Noir became bored when he was not getting enough reasons to take his clone down and went on his own debauchery spree, eating babies and violating corpses. He could give Hannibal Lecter a run for his money. Ew. His plan was then to frame Homelander for it, and when the latter failed to recall anything, he thought he was indeed responsible for such acts. In fact, it was Black Noir who raped Butcher's wife, dressed as Homelander. Noir's excessive violence is not directly shown in the comics, but readers can catch some of it in the snippets from the photographs Butcher had as blackmail material. However, Butcher soon learns the truth and kills off Noir with his machine gun in an extremely gruesome manner, with the latter's guts falling out in the midst of a bloodbath. Tek Knight's final obsession. Tek Knight, aka Robert Vernon, was one such superhero in the Boys comics who did not have any superpowers of his own. Much like Bruce Wayne, he relied on technology and cutting-edge gadgets, including an armor, to engage in combat. However, he was no Batman. In fact, any despicable version of Bruce doesn't even come close to Tek. He hailed from a wealthy family and was the founder of a metahuman team, the Payback, which is often considered a lesser evil group compared to the Seven. In fact, Butcher described Tech as a boring superhero who never really did anything morally wrong. Tech is mostly mentioned in the initial seasons of the series. We can finally see what a psychotic bastard he is in the Season 4 episode titled Dirty Business, where he shows Huey his BDSM dungeon. However, Tech was given much more footage on the pages of the comics and was portrayed as a hero who lost his mind and would find himself compulsively copulating with anything and everything. He would be aroused by both living beings as well as inanimate objects, including his Techmobile and even a tiger carpet. Tech tried to seek medical help, fearing his obsession would get him out of Payback. But guess what? He ended up doing the deed with the counselor's cat, which has been subtly implied in the pages. Thank heavens they didn't go full graphic with it. Tech's perversion would not just stop here. He would even talk all dirty and raunchy while having intercourse with random objects. A newspaper in the comics even read that Tech tried to rape his family butler. His obsession is shown in a much watered-down manner in the spin-off Gen V, where Tech is shown as an alumnus of Godolphin University, along with his weird obsession with tree hollows, vacuum cleaners, and even skull statues. It's revealed that Tech has a brain tumor, which is not only fatal, but the reason behind his sexual psychosis. First, the vibrator bomb, and then this? Jesus, what kind of kink did the writers have? Butcher's animal cruelty. Why'd you kill me dog, Jack? Billy Butcher never really comes off as a pet-loving, mushy guy, but as it so happens, the lethal superhero hunter has a soft spot for the pod ones. Well, just his one, though. He has no affection whatsoever for the conventionally softer dogs. Terror is an English bulldog who appeared from the very first issue of the comics, where we can see how Butcher has trained him to act on the words F it, and Terror attacks a passing poor Shih Tzu named Benjamin. You already get the drift that he's not exactly a cute ball of fur, but a vicious dog who pees on Homelander's legs on command and is often called a brute by other people. He was every bit of what Butcher would want his pet to be. However, everyone in the boys' gang got along well with Terror, and being the good dog dad Billy was, he would ask Terror to escape from dangerous situations. Butcher was extremely protective of his monstrous dog, and reacted violently if anyone threatened to harm Terror. Sadly, Black Noir killed Terror, but Butcher mistook Jake from Jupiter to be the culprit, and boy, did he go nuts. A devastated Butcher went after Jack from Jupiter and in an almost disoriented state, stabbed him to death. He robotically kept on stabbing Jack so many times in the stomach that the superhero ended up being cut in half, while Butcher just kept on saying one line repeatedly. Why'd you kill me, dog, Jack? Sure, Butcher has murdered Soups before, but this was horrifying, and is the most grisly one he commits in the series. Not only did Butcher live up to his name, but showed readers that he has nothing but a stone-cold heart. Blarney Cock and the Hamster. Before the boys targeted the Seven, they confronted a young superhero team, the Teenage Kicks, who seemed like the Teen Titans gone rogue. The Teenage Kicks was owned by Vought International, and even A-Train was a previous member of it. Led by Big Game, the Teen Soups were always upgrading their costumes, hairstyles, getting piercings, and tattoos. To quote Butcher, Teenage Kicks like to think of themselves as a bit more of Gen X. They were notoriously known for drug abuse and sexual misconduct, often engaging in orgies. However, things went to a different level when a member of Teenage Kicks, Blarney Cock, was found dead. Blarney was the illegitimate son of Queen Maeve and the Legend, who actually died twice. First, he died in issue 6 of The Boys, where Huey punches him in the chest, literally blasting through it. Huey was still unaware about the effects of Compound V, and went into a state of shock when Blarney's pet hamster crawled out of his pants. We all understand what happened here, right? Let's not be vocal about it. Huey took pity on the animal and adopted him, naming him Jamie. Blarney is revived after a few issues by the magical Compound V, but the resurrection was not as magical as Vought hoped it to be. It turned Blarney into a zombie who would constantly mumble incoherently, urinate himself, and act as a sexual predator, seeking out the hamster in his zombified state, causing Huey to kill him all over again and save Jamie. That's it. Nothing can get weirder than this. Mother's Milk origins. Marvin T. Milk is probably the one person in the boys' gang who seems to have it together. He's married and fathers a daughter, Janine, and kind of balances Butcher's impulsive sadism with his reasonable thinking. However, in the comics, Marvin is long divorced with Monique, who is a crackhead, and Janine is a rebellious teenager who's roped in by her mother to shoot incest pornography. If you think that's the only dark side of Marvin's life in the comics, you're gravely mistaken. See, he has a nickname, Mother's Milk, which I believe for the sake of decency has been abbreviated to MM. But why does someone as dominant and strong like Marvin have such a ridiculous pet name? While the show never really delved into it, the comics explained it in the most bizarre manner. It so happens that MM is born with compound V in his blood. His mother worked at a Vought facility, and on constant exposure to the serum, she birthed a supe, Marvin, who enjoys superhuman strength and durability with a genius-level intellect. However, MM has to keep consuming his mother's compound V loaded breast milk to retain his superpowers and slow down aging. And even as an adult, he drinks directly from his mother's bosom, which has been very vividly and bluntly implied in various comic arcs. Later, MM started storing his mother's breast milk in a bottle for missions where he has to stay away from her, but the fact that an old lady nurses her big-ass boy to keep granting him superpowers is the most disturbing thing the creators could come up with. Remember how Robin Arryn would drink from his mother's breast milk in Game of Thrones, and we all thought that to be unusual? Well, the comic depictions are 100 times more unsettling and grotesque. It would make even Freud twist in his grave. Godolkin and the G-Men, parody turned nightmarish. The G-Men are a direct dig at the X-Men characters. This superhero group existed in the 1980s alongside Payback and was funded by the one and only Vought International. The G-Men was founded by John Godolkin, the same Godolkin after whom the university is depicted in the Gen V spin-off. The G-Men appear as the main rivals of the boys in the We Gotta Go storyline of the comics. However, back in the Godolkin mansion, the leader's horrible secrets were discovered. He would sexually abuse and rape the G-Men members when they were barely 9 or 10 years old, and brainwashed them into swearing allegiance to him. He threatened the young kids that if his truth came out, all of them would lose the glitz and glamour of the superhero life, which soon became their only coping mechanism. If any member went off the rails, the others would hunt him or her down. The boys got drawn into the scene and began investigating Godolkin, only to find out he was a pedophile. While they're all pumped up to take his heinous team down, Vought swooped in with its private group of mercenaries and slaughtered the G-Men. The corporation feared that Godolkin's reality would severely damage their image, and while the sequence was indeed shocking, it was equally satisfying. Marvelous verdict. Phew, that was one upsetting ride. The Boys shows a middle finger to how superheroes have been portrayed for generations, and to say it's a diabolical piece of literary work would be an understatement. It basically slips down a dark rabbit hole, and we fans, we love going down that road and getting those jump scares at how unhinged the stories can be. While the show is definitely a brilliant piece of work, it can never come close to how horrific the comic was. Ennis and Robertson somehow had a free pass to do everything they wanted, and it's like their id took over their pen. Nothing was tabooed on these comic pages. Nothing seemed to be too much. It was a flow of pure human creation, unchained by societal norms. The Boys is a guilty pleasure. Deep down, we know we should not really be enjoying the gore, nudity, and bloodshed, but that's how mysterious the human psyche is. We love every bit of these crazy stories. With the new season of the show on the cards, let's see how bold they can get this time. Until next time, bye.